Hello, welcome to Car Church tonight. Good to be with you all. Looking forward to having some time with you tonight in the scriptures. I should mention to you that I'm coming to you live tonight from Wyoming, and excited to be here to visit my daughters. And one of my daughters is here with me tonight, Sarah, and she's going to pray for us tonight. Patty's with the grandbaby. So welcome, Sarah, and she's going to also share some things with you real quickly.
Hi, welcome to Car Church. I have a couple of announcements if you are in the Jackson Hole area. My mom and dad will be attending Gateway Church next Sunday. If you don't have anywhere to go, they have a service at 10 a.m. Please join them. And then also if you're in the Jackson Hole area, next Saturday, June 5th from 8 to 10 a.m., they will be hosting a drop-in breakfast at Hayden's Post at Snow King, and they would love to see anyone in the Wyoming area. So let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for this time that each person has set aside to be able to hear from you. You know what's going on in each of our hearts, and so I pray that you will calm our spirits and that you will prepare our hearts to receive the word that Pastor Mike has for us tonight. I thank you for what you're doing in each of our lives, and I thank you, Father God, for what is to come this year. And we just thank you for all that you're doing in your name. Amen.
Amen. It's good to have my girls with me tonight. Amen. Well, if you have your Bible with you tonight, I know that there's going to be the posting of the scriptures. Becca will be putting those up. But tonight we're going to start in Psalm 107, and that's really going to be our focus tonight, is this Psalm 107. And this is a familiar psalm, and probably one of the psalms that throughout the 40-plus years of ministry, 43 years of ministry, I've spoken about this psalm many times, but this week the Lord really spoke to me through this psalm and really gave me a revelation so in line with the things that we've been talking about throughout this past season of Car Church, about this powerful picture of what it's like to let Christ live through us rather than us trying to live our life for Jesus. The theme of my life these days, as you know. But I want you to look with me at Psalm 107, and I'm called this tonight, Thrive or Survive. And the reason is because I believe this psalm reveals to us two approaches to life. And one approach that is just really about survival. It's about living between and from one crisis to another crisis to another crisis, just getting through, getting past this one, getting on to the next one. And then the second path, if you will, is a path that's really about thriving. It's about not just survival, not just getting through life, but actually thriving in our situation. And this psalm has a really interesting way to present that idea of these two pathways or perspectives. And let's begin there in verse 1. It says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so, whom he has redeemed from the hand of the enemy, and gathered out of the lands from the east and from the west and from the north and from the south." Now, to begin with, in this passage of scripture, he starts with one of the key themes, and it's the key characteristic mark of a person who's learning to walk the path of thriving rather than the path of surviving. And it starts with these words, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. His mercy endures forever." This one phrase, "give thanks to the Lord," is the key idea behind the pathway that leads us to a life of thriving. And the reason is because this word, give thanks, it means more than just praise. As a matter of fact, the word means to throw or cast out. Now, how can give thanks mean to throw or cast out? Well, here's how. And these are all literal translations from the Hebrew dictionary. It means to show or point out with the hand, extended. So the picture is you're throwing your hand out like this. You're pointing at something. You're throwing your hand and pointing something. And what you're pointing at is with your hand extended at something. So the picture is that you're pointing and extending your hand at something to point it out, okay? And then it means to give thanks, to praise, or to celebrate. So here's the idea behind this word give thanks. It literally means you're pointing at someone and you're celebrating them. You're pointing at them to praise them. You're pointing at them to give thanks for them. It's like you're saying, I want to point somebody out to you. This person, this one right here, they're the one that I want to give praise to tonight. They're the one that I want to celebrate. And interestingly enough, one other aspect of this word means to confess concerning oneself. Now, you put these ideas together, here's the basic picture. It means to point to God. It means to give him the glory. It means to confess my inability. And it means to revere and worship him. Put those ideas together, and this gives us a picture of what it means to move down the pathway of thriving. Because what I'm doing is, rather than focusing on me, on my ability, on my perspective, on what I can do, what I am going to set out to determine, I'm focusing and pointing my finger to the Lord. I'm saying, Lord, you're the one. Lord, you're the one we're here to celebrate. Lord, you're the one. I confess my inability, but I'm giving you praise. I'm celebrating you. I revere and worship you with my life. That's the way I want to live my life. Now, the reason why that's important to understand is because there's this second idea. And this second idea, this second picture, if you will, is a picture of a life that is not about what the Lord can do or about his praise or about his glory, but it's a picture of a life that's really about what I can do. It's about my fleshly effort, about me living my life my way. And in this passage in Psalm 107, he talks about 4 categories of people. And I'm not going to take the time to go through each one of these, but let's just look at the first one. In verse 4, he says, they wandered in the wilderness in a desolate way. They found no city to dwell in. Hungry and thirsty, their soul fainted in them. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distresses. He led them forth by the right way, that they might go to a city for a dwelling. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. For he satisfies the longing soul and fills the hungry soul with goodness. Now this introduces to us the second path. The second path, it's found there in verse 6. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them out of their distress, and he led them forth by the right way. But here's what I want you to notice. The first group of people, he says, they were living in giving thanks to the Lord, pointing to the Lord, acknowledging and confessing their own inability, saying, you're the one who has the ability. You're the one who we want to celebrate. You're the one I want to worship. You're the one that can pull this off. You're the one that can do it. But this group of people, it says, they wandered in the wilderness in a desolate way. They found no city to dwell in. They were hungry and thirsty. Their soul was fainting. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. Here's the 2 pathways. Can I share them with you? Pathway number 1 is the give thanks pathway. Pathway number 2 is the cry out to the Lord pathway. Pathway number 1, you begin preventively when you face the day, when you face the week, saying, Lord, you're the one that knows how to live this Christian life. You're the one who's in me, my hope of glory. You're the one that has alone the capacity to give me the wisdom to walk in the ways I'm supposed to walk in. You're the one that can do through me and in me what I cannot do in my own self. I'm pointing to you, Lord. I'm living by faith in the Son of God, not of faith in me, but in faith in you. You're the one I want to revere. You're the one I worship. You're the one I want to point out to. I want to say to myself, Mike Atkins, what you can't do, God can do. What you don't know, he knows. And I start out by living my life in a constant dependency upon the Lord, acknowledging my inability, but pointing out to his ability. The cry out to the Lord way is I strike out into my life on my own. In this first group of people, it says that they wandered. They were wanderers. They were aimless. They didn't really have any idea what to do. They just got up and went and did what they wanted to do. And they were wandering in a wilderness in a desolate way. They were homeless. They found no city to dwell in. They were hungry. They were thirsty. Their soul fainted in them. The soul, the mind, the will, the emotions. They were losing strength. They were just wandering aimlessly through life. They weren't dependent upon the Lord. They were just getting up and doing their own thing every day. And the end result was they were hungry. They were thirsty. Their soul was fainting in them. But it says, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. The word trouble there, it means to be in a narrow place. It's like, just imagine you're climbing through a canyon. You get stuck. You get caught in a narrow place, and you're constrained, and you can't get out of that place. That's what was happening to these people. Why? Because they weren't relying on what Christ could do in them and through them, what the Lord could do. Their finger wasn't pointing to the Lord. They were, my plan, what I'm going to do. I'm going to get up and do, just wander around, just let life sort of happen to me with no connection to or dependency upon the Lord. And the result was they got stuck. And they got in a place where they were constrained and in a narrow place. Now they cried out to the Lord. Well, what did the Lord do? He does what he always does because he loves us. It says he delivered them out of their distresses. He led them forth by the right way, that they might go to a city for a dwelling. But then notice what he says in verse 8. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men, for he satisfies the longing soul and he fills the hungry soul with goodness. Here we're back at path A. Oh, that men would give thanks. Oh, that men would point their finger to me, that they would give thanks to me, they would praise me, they would celebrate me, they would confess concerning themselves their own inability, and they'd rely upon me. Yes, I can respond to you getting in trouble and me getting you out of trouble. But he says, oh, that you would start your life depending upon me, pointing to me as your hope, relying upon my life inside of you, instead of you just wandering through life, trying to figure things out. You know, it's interesting when he says, oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works. The word there for wonderful works, it means literally to separate. Well, now, why would a wonderful work mean to separate? It means to separate, to distinguish this from that. And it means things that are hard or hidden, things that are too high or wondrous or extraordinary. And here's literally what the Hebrew dictionary says. It means things that are beyond one's power, separated by distinguishing action, difficult to understand, exceptional, and surpassing. Now here's what he says. Now again, remember this first category, the wanderers, aimless. They go out into the day, they're on their own, they're facing life on their own, they're making their own choices and decisions. And what happens? They end up in desolate places. They end up hungry and thirsty and their souls fainting. So they cry out to the Lord because they didn't start by relying on him, trusting in his power through them, listening for his voice, being directed by his Spirit. They just did their own thing. And their soul became famished. Then they cried out to the Lord. The Lord put them on the right path, and he filled them with goodness. But he says, oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works, which are beyond my power, which are separated from what I could do by the distinguishing action of the Holy Spirit, that are difficult to understand. I couldn't have figured out to do this, which are exceptional and surpassing. That's what the Lord can do in me that I can't do for him. When I try and live my life either for myself, for others, or even for the Lord, I'm operating out of my fleshly ability, and before long I can find myself aimless. You know, the second category of people he talks about, I would call them the bound or the self-imprisoned. Notice how he says it. Those who sat in darkness and the shadow of death. Verse 10, they were bound in affliction and irons because they had rebelled against the words of God. They despised the counsel of the Most High. Therefore, he brought down their heart with labor, and they fell down. There was no one to help them. But look at verse 13. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble. and he saved them out of their distresses. He brought them out of darkness, out of the shadow of death. He broke their chains in pieces. But look what it says in verse 15. Oh, you can just hear the heart. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. It's like, again, the psalmist is saying, oh, if we would only understand what God can do in us, through us, that we can't do in ourselves. And when we try and live our lives for ourselves, for others, or even we try and live our life for the Lord, rather than letting him be the strength of our life, him being the one that does it through us, then we can end up in bondage. And we end up crying out in bondage, just like the people cried out who were in aimlessness and they were wandering. And the Lord intervenes and he brings them out of the situation. But the psalmist keeps saying, oh, that I could get you to understand. If you would start to point to the Lord, if you'd start to look to him, if you'd start to give him the celebration, him the praise, trust in what he can do through you, and relinquish control of your life to him. But again, there's a third category. The third category, it says in verse 17, fools, because of their transgression, because of their iniquities, were afflicted. Their soul abhorred all manner of food. They drew near the gates of death. Verse 19, then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he saved them out of their distresses. He sent his word. He healed them. He delivered them from their destructions. Again, verse 21, but oh, if men would just give thanks to the Lord for his goodness, if they just let his wondrous works, things beyond our power, separated from what we could ever do, difficult to understand, that things that we couldn't have figured out, things that are exceptional and surpassing us, if men would just do that, then what a difference it would make. You know, there's a fourth category here. Verse 23, those who go down to the sea in ships, who do business on great waters, they see the works of the Lord and his wonders in the deep. He commands and raises the stormy wind, which lifts up the waves of the sea. They mount up to the heavens. They go down again to the depths. Their soul melts because of trouble. They reel to and fro and stagger like a drunken man. They're at their wits' end. Verse 28, then they cry out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brings them out of their distresses. He calms the storm so that its waves are still. Then they're glad because they're quiet, so he guides them to their desired haven. But look at verse 31. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men. Let them exalt him in the assembly of the people and praise him in the company of the elders. You know what's interesting to me? These four categories of people, two of them, their situation is, one is rebellion, the other is transgression. Kind of what we would call bad flesh, you know, rebellion and transgression. Well, and they got in trouble. And in their trouble, they called out to the Lord, and he delivered them, and he set them on the right path. He got them out of prison. But there's two other groups of people here. One are the people that are aimless, just wandering through life. They're not necessarily, didn't say anything about them doing anything evil. They just were lost. The second group is those who go to the sea in great ships. These are people that are doing big things, you know. They're engaged in life, living their life. But again, they get into these circumstances, these situations, and they get in over their head. And their self-reliance results in them getting in trouble. So here you have four groups of people: rebellious, transgressors, aimless, wanderers, even people who are doing big things, great things as far as the world's concerned. But what happens to all four of them? They're on the path that I call the crying out path. They go off on their own, in their own energy, their own strength, either to do good things or to do bad things, or even neutral things. The wanderers aren't doing much of anything. They're not doing anything bad. They're not doing anything good. They're just wandering around. But what happens? They keep getting themselves stuck. They keep getting in trouble. They keep getting in difficulty. And what do? They cry out to the Lord, and he comes and delivers them, gets them out of their distress. But then what happens? They get right back on whatever path they were on, and they go right back to where they were, wandering, imprisoned, doing great works, whatever it might be, transgressing. They get back in trouble, they cry out. They get back in trouble, they cry out. And their whole life is like this. Look what it says in verse 33. To me, this is a picture of the difference between these two paths. In verse 33, he says, he turns rivers into a wilderness, and the water springs into dry ground, and a fruitful land into barrenness for the wickedness of those who dwell in it. The word wickedness means to be twisted. It's like something that was supposed to be like this, but it got twisted. It's not just about evil. It's been ruined. It's not working the way it's supposed to work. Well, look what he says. I believe he's saying this. For the people who live what I call the calling out in trouble path, their rivers become wildernesses. Their water springs become dry ground. Their fruitful land becomes barren, because they're constantly living from one crisis, one problem, one stuck situation to another. And they're moving from one to another to another. In between, they're calling out, God delivers them, they get right back on the path of a self-directed life. Sin, my definition of sin, is self-inspired narrative. Some are writing a wandering narrative. Some are writing a rebellious narrative. Some are writing a transgressor's narrative. Some are writing a great man, great person's narrative, but they're writing their own narrative. And they get in trouble, they cry out. They get in trouble, they cry out. They get back on the path, God puts them right on where they need to be. He delivers them out of their problem, and then they find themselves back in trouble, crying out, crying out, crying out. No wonder the psalmist said in each situation, even from the very beginning, oh, if men would only give thanks to the Lord, if they would only thank the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men, if they'd only get off of the path of the crying out life to the path of the giving thanks life, which is more than just verbally thanking the Lord for his goodness. It's about a lifestyle that recognizes, Lord, what I've been doing with my life is not working. What I've got to do is point my whole direction, cast my finger in your direction, Lord. You're the one I want to be living in me. You're the one whose power and strength alone can make sense out of this world. You're the one who has the wisdom that I don't have, that understands things I cannot understand, that can do things that are beyond my power, that you are so different than I am, that it's your works, wonderful works, are separated by the distinguishing factor of who you are. Lord, you are the one who's exceptional. You're the one who's surpassing. I quickly confess my inability. And what I want to do is I want my life to point to you. I want to give you all the glory and control. I want to confess my inability, and I want to revere and worship you. I want my life to be you living in me and through me. That's what life is meant to be. I don't want to live aimlessly wandering. I don't want to live in rebellion, powered by my flesh. I don't want to live in constant transgression of the truth and the right way. And I don't even want to live doing great things on great waters, all inspired by me. What I want to do is I want to give thanks to the Lord. I want to be thankful for your goodness, and I want to invite the wonderful works of your life through me. There's just a couple of last thoughts I want to share with you tonight. One of these is, in John chapter 4, there's a picture of this where Jesus was meeting with the woman at the well. And the woman at the well and he were having a conversation. And then Jesus makes this comment to her. He says about the water that she's drinking at the well, he says, whoever drinks of this water is going to thirst again. But whoever drinks of the water that I'll give him will never thirst, because the water that I give him will become a well, a river inside of him, springing up into everlasting life. Zoe. That's the life of Christ himself. Now, what's interesting about that, when you look at it, is what he's saying is that when you go to this well, he's saying to the woman at the well, when you go to this well, you're going to a well that will quench your thirst, but then you're just going to get thirsty again. And then you come back up here, quench your thirst, then you're just going to get thirsty again. Then you'll go again, you're going to get thirsty again. But he says, if you'll come to me, I can put a well inside of you that will spring up into everlasting life, and you'll never thirst again. What's he saying? You can live on the path of what I call the crying out to God path. I'm in trouble, I need your help. I'm in trouble, I need your help. I got back on the path, thank you, Lord. I got out of prison, thank you, Lord. I got out of the ocean storm, thank you, Lord. Now I'm back in trouble. You're constantly having to come back again and again and again to get out of the fixes you got in the first place. Or you can get on the giving thanks path, which is the total reliance on who Christ is path, what he can do, and he can put life inside of you that can give you a constant source of thriving instead of just surviving between crises. There's another picture of this that I think is so important. It's found in Philippians chapter 4, where the Bible tells us to be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, to let our requests be made known unto God. Here's the key word, with thanksgiving. You know, a lot of people, they're anxious. They pray. And then they get a little relief. And then a new crisis comes. They get anxious again. They pray again. They get a little relief. Then they get anxious again. Here's what is the key difference, though. He says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be known unto God. Oh, that men would give thanks to the Lord. The thanksgiving piece moves the attention from me to the Lord. Moves it from dependency upon me, reliance upon me coming up with the solution, me figuring out what to do, me coming up out of my own strength with my own narrative of how to make my life count, how to make it matter, how to make it work. And instead, I start to thank the Lord for who he is, what he can do, what he's capable of. And I move to that place where I'm saying, oh, Lord, I want to give thanks to you for your wonderful works, for your goodness, for the fact that you live in me, for the fact that your presence and power are available to me. I think this is also seen in the life of Saul and David. Saul was a guy who was, he was a very independent, self-sufficient guy. He was going to get a lot of stuff done. He planned his own battles. He got involved in figuring out what he was going to do for the nation of Israel. He was manipulating things. Before long, he was consulting witches and sorcerers, getting answers. Why? He was running his own life. And he'd call out to the Lord. The Lord would deliver him. He'd get back in another fix. He'd call out to the Lord. David, on the other hand, David would come up against situations and he would say, I don't have the power to overcome Goliath. I don't have the strength. You come at me with shields and with spears, but I'm going to come at you in the name of the Lord. He's the one who has the ability. He's the one that has the capacity. When David would go up against his enemies, you can read it in the Psalms. What would he do? He'd say, Lord, I can't handle this situation, but Lord, you are my strength. You are my strong tower. You are my ability. When lions and bears attacked his sheep, he went in the power of the Lord. And this is the difference between a life of thriving and a life of surviving. In the end, it's about this idea of making a determination. Now, we're looking in the Old Testament here, but we're looking at the Old Testament through the lens of the New Testament revelation. And remember what he says, each time the people cried out, what happens? It says they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he delivered them, he saved them out of their distresses. Remember how we get saved? Romans chapter 5, verse 10. We were reconciled to the Father by the death of Christ. Why? So that we would qualify to be saved by his life. Christ in me is the hope of glory. The very name Yeshua, it means salvation. So how does the Lord now save us? He saves us by the power of his life. And when we are living our life every day, every week, month after month, year after year, by our own strength, writing our own story, wandering or rebelling or transgressing or even trying to do big things in life, but we're doing it all in our own strength, our own power, then we cry out to the Lord. Why? Because we don't know what to do, because we're stuck, because we got ourselves in trouble, because we found ourselves in bondage, because our soul is hungry and thirsty and we're empty, because we've been doing it all on our own. We cry out to the Lord. What happens? He releases the power of the life of his Son. He saves us. He rescues us. Okay? He gets us out of our situation. But then what do? We take back over. And the minute we take back over our own lives, guess what happens? We're back on the path to problems. This is why the psalmist kept saying, "Oh, if men would only give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works to the children of men." If men would only realize what Christ could do in them that they cannot do for him and that they can't figure out on their own. This is the place that makes the difference between surviving and thriving. So let me ask you a question tonight. Where are you? I mean, be honest with yourself. There's no point in pretending. I can tell you, I've had years of my life where I was just surviving. I was surviving in between crises, surviving in between troubles. Sometimes I was wandering, sometimes I was rebelling, sometimes I was transgressing, sometimes I was doing big stuff, really exciting big stuff, okay? But man, I was in over my head. I was doing it in my own strength, doing it in my own ability, writing my own narrative. And I never really relied upon the Lord until I got in trouble. I was living the crying out life. When I get in trouble, I'd cry out to the Lord, and his grace, his mercy is so wondrous. He'd come in and he'd rescue me, get me back on the right path, break my chains, calm the storms. Okay, thank you, Lord. I'll take over from here. Some of you that are listening to me, I don't know whether you'd be listening to me live, whether you're listening to me later this week or months from now, you fall upon this message. I'm going to tell you this. You don't have to live the crying out life. The life of independence and self-sufficiency until you get in trouble and then asking the Lord to give you a hand up. You don't have to live that way. Instead, you can live a giving thanks life where your attention and your heart get focused entirely upon what Christ can do through you and in you, and you come to that point where you say, Lord, I'm tired of me. I'm tired of me. I've been hungry, I've been thirsty, I've been in bondage, my soul has been empty and hollow. I've been, drowning in the storms of life. I'm tired of doing life on my own, of doing it my way, trying to write my own story. What I want to do instead, Lord, is I want to entirely rely upon you right now. I want to say, Jesus, I want to stop living my life for myself. I want to stop living my life for others, and I want to stop even trying to live my life for you. Instead, I want you to begin to live your life through me. I want your strength, your life, your power. You know things I don't know. You've got power I don't have. You've got surpassing exceptional capacities that I don't possess. Lord, I want to see, I've got a good view of what my life lived by me looks like. I want to see what your life lived through me looks like. That's where I want to go in the days ahead. If you do, you're going to find this. Remember we read, he turns rivers into a wilderness, water springs into dry ground, a fruitful land into barrenness. That's the crying out life. But look what he says. He says in verse 35, he turns a wilderness into pools of water and dry land into water springs. And there he makes the hungry dwell, that they may establish a city for a dwelling, and sow fields and plant vineyards, that they may yield a fruitful harvest. And he blesses them, and they multiply greatly, and he does not let their cattle decrease. And when they're diminished and brought low through oppression or affliction or sorrow, he pours contempt on princes, and he sets them free. What's he saying here? When I start to live the dependent life upon the life of Christ, I start to move into a fruitfulness I never knew was possible. Instead of wandering, I find a city of dwelling. Instead of being in rebellion and bondage, I find liberty and freedom. Instead of being in transgression and shame, I find myself in innocence and joy. And instead of being in the storms of the great works that I came up with, that now I'm drowning in, I find myself at my desired haven. And I'm only in those places and doing those things the Lord has guided me to, and he's doing through me. I can tell you, it makes a big difference to live the dependent life versus the independent life, where Christ is living through me rather than me trying to live for others, for myself, or even for him. But me in charge, me doing it all. I want to pray for you tonight. And I just want to say this. Think about it with me. Which path are you on? Just be honest. Which path are you on? Do you find yourself living from crisis to crisis and just sort of, okay, I got my breath caught, got out of the last situation, going back to wandering, rebellion, whatever it is. Now I'm back in trouble again. Or have you gotten to that place where you said, Lord, not only am I tired of my sin, I'm tired of me. Me trying to do it in my strength, in my ability. I want to relinquish control. I want my strong will of self-sufficiency and independence to be replaced by a total dependency upon you. I want to start pointing everything to you. That's where I am these days, I'm going to tell you. I'm constantly just thinking, Jesus, I think I can't do this. Even tonight, I'm in Wyoming here. I've got this message. I got my notes here. But Lord, I can't help a single soul without you. Only you can do this, Lord. Only you know what somebody needs to hear that would never have even occurred to me to say. So in everything, I'm learning to constantly lean upon the power of his life in me. I quickly agree with the Lord about my inability, but I quickly point to Jesus. When the devil comes to me and says, you can't do it, I say, I know it. I agree. Matter of fact, I'll even give you a few more reasons why I can't do it. But guess who can? Jesus. And guess where he lives? Right in here. So I'm going to give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for his wonderful works in me as a child of God. Let's pray. Father, in Jesus' name tonight, I'm so thankful for those who might be listening to this message. Father, there's so much here in Psalm 107, so much more we could go through and go to. But Lord, I've known what it's like to be a Saul, doing things in my own strength, coming up with my own plans and strategies. But I also have learned the difference between that and being like David, the shepherd boy. I can't do anything great, but God's a great God, and he lives in me, and he can do it through me. And so I'm going to put myself out there and watch and see his deliverance. Lord, I know what it's like to be the woman at the well, coming to the well, getting my thirst quenched, getting thirsty again, going back. But I've learned what it's like to be able to have a well inside of me, springing up, where I'm not thirsting, not living in a survival mode, but in a thriving mode, because I'm living from the inside out. Jesus, I pray for my brothers and sisters tonight, for everyone that's here. God, oh that men would give thanks to the Lord for his goodness and for the wonderful works he's capable of doing in the children of men. God, I pray that we would learn the path of dependence. In Jesus' name, amen. Blessings to you all tonight. It's a joy to be here in Wyoming, to be with my daughter. And we just say goodnight to you and send our blessings to you. Much love from us all. Good night.